Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I just wanted to first wish you a happy Easter and kind of talk a little bit about some things that have been kind of bothering me. I heard yesterday about what is a one-day job opening. What I mean by that is the job was open for literally 24 hours because they got so many applications to the full-time pharmacy position. And I finished the Pharmacy Unicorn Jobs book. And I wanted to introduce you to the people that are in it. It's up on Amazon and Kindle. It'll be out in audiobook in 6 weeks. And then what I do is, instead of creating a print book and ebook at the same time, I use the audio back and forth with professional voice talent. And after that, that's when I produce the print book, just because we can kind of catch some things that maybe we couldn't have caught in regular editing. So I want to go through kind of what the book is about first, then talk a little bit about kind of how to use it and explaining it. So Anna Shields taught me this term, the unicorn job. And a unicorn job is one that fits you perfectly. So this job that I have now doesn't only fit me because I like to teach, but also because, I've got 3 kids and there's a lot of flexibility in it. And I was just on my YouTube and somebody said, why would I go to pharmacy school to become a chemistry teacher? Why wouldn't I go to college to become a chemistry teacher? And what I was thinking was, it's really more that you are thinking of the first job as the only job rather than thinking of all the jobs that you're going to have. So in the book, I talk through 6 major transitions that I had. And I talk about not only the primary job I had, but the side hustle I was trying to do, and some failed, some worked well, and things like that. But let me introduce you to many of the people in the book and a little bit about their stories and kind of what I was trying to get at. I divided the resources in terms of those whom you can, who have resources for you, into 3 major groups: clinical, then business and career, and financial. So the first one on the list is Core Consult RX out of South Carolina. Mike Corvino, who was an MMA fighter, and Cole Swanson. And I heard of Mike Corvino because of Richard Waite, RX Radio, and Adam Martin of the Fit Pharmacist. And there's this kind of, I call it a myth, but that you have to have a residency to get a clinical job. And as things are going towards this primary care, ambulatory care, he proves that with enough hustle and enough hard work, that isn't true, because he's BCPS certified, although he doesn't have a residency, and there's some other people that did this as well. I don't have a residency, and I've been teaching in college for 11 years. So I know the 3,000 of you that didn't match, that were in, are thinking everything is over. That's absolutely not true. There are many, many careers that you're going to hear about in this book that do work that way. But there's a couple of very specific people that I keep saying Core Consult, but Mike Corvino talks to. TLDR Pharmacies, Brandon Dyson, he talks about his oncology career and how he did only PGY1 and still has a very clinically focused, very specific oncology practice. He also talks with BCPS as a transplant pharmacist, Holly Berry, and how they use evidence-based pharmacotherapy. And he also talks to PAs and nurses as well. So he's very interprofessional, and their podcast is awesome. It's just so fun to listen to. But kind of tying into those things where you're working with other professionals, and he's just someone that's very easy to get along with, but also very knowledgeable. The 2 things you need really to get in the physician's office. MedEd 101, or Eric Christensen, you guys may not know that he has a clinical job pharmacist position without experience. He did a presentation called Entrepreneurship, Education, and Embracing in the Digital Age in Healthcare. And he talks very plainly that he had not done a residency, and you can find this blog post on his blog, meded101.com. And he still got a clinical job right out of school. And this is happening over and over again through the book. I talk about very briefly about how I succeeded in kind of creating a channel. The YouTube channel has 15,000 subscribers, 5 million downloads, and I talk about how I not only educate in the classroom, but obviously there are millions of people, or not millions of people, but millions of downloads, and that I've impacted many people, and that's really gratifying. And how I kind of approached choosing my niche, which is really undergraduate pharmacology. Pharmacy Joe, if you're a hospital pharmacist, you have to listen to this guy, especially if you're critical care. His podcasts are 7-minute bursts, and he also transitioned from community pharmacist to hospital pharmacist without any kind of residency at all. TLDR Pharmacy, those guys have great content, and a lot of what they focus on is residency and how to succeed as a resident. I know it seems like that is a million miles away right now, as we're in April, but the things that you do now are the things that end up on your CV, and he has great content with his two partners on tldrpharmacy.com. So very briefly, just kind of those are some of the clinical examples, websites that you can go to, podcasts and blogs that you can follow. The big one was the career business one. So we start with Blair Thielemeyer, and I worked with her on a book, How to Build a Pharmacy Consulting Business. And she literally lost her job while she was pregnant, found some shift work, found an opportunity in that shift work, and now she has, it's coming up in May. I want to say it's 2 or 3 weeks away, but the Elevate Pharmacy Summit, where she lets you hear, I think there's 5 different groups that you can listen to of people that have these kind of unicorn jobs, and they tell you, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is the opportunity that I see and saw, and she provides that access for free for a limited time, but tremendously altruistic. And then there's the audiobook that we put together, How to Build a Pharmacy Consulting Business. She has her Pharmapreneur Academy, which also kind of takes you through those things as well, but just a model entrepreneur in pharmacy who had her back against the wall, like many of you probably do, where you're in a position like, okay, I didn't get a residency, not seeing full or even part-time opportunities. What do I do now? Healthcare Marketing Network, if you have any interest in writing, this is where I would start. They focus on freelance writing and kind of that smaller 500 words, 1,000 words, those types of things, where a lot of their members are not necessarily have an English background, they just have a passion for writing, and they've gotten better at writing through writing. But really it was just, like Janine Kelbach is a good example where she's a labor and delivery nurse and just used her expertise and quite a bit of hard work to get her freelance career off the ground, and now they're a great community. So that's the Healthcare Marketing Network. Mike Len's Voice is a great story of someone who I think sold his pharmacy, and he's the audiobook narrator I use the most. He's a pharmacist out of New York, and he has 3 businesses. One is voiceovers, 2 helping others with their podcasts, and then voiceover success, helping others become voiceover artists. Pharmacy Moms Group, Susie Solomon, I interviewed her, episode 10 of the Pharmacy Leaders podcast, so that would have been just after December of, not last year, but the year before that. And that was just when it was a little tiny group, a couple thousand. And now we've started the Pharmacy Dads group, so you are welcome to join if you're a pharmacist dad. And again, it's not the same as the Pharmacist Moms group. It's quite different. And I just started it that day that Tiger Woods hugged his son, and I had that picture of him hugging his dad, Earl Woods, and how big a deal that was, and just a place that pharmacist dads can go and kind of talk about some of the things that we've got going on. I have, of course, Pharmacy Leaders Podcast, and something I'll start later, which will be the Pharmacy Residency Help or Pharmacy Residency Podcast, where I'll work to take you through pharmacy residency with some podcast episodes and give it its own dedicated site. Those of you that have found opportunity in compounding, Seth DePasquale is probably one of the best in the country. He owns and runs BET Pharm, and that has long-acting injectable hormone formulations for horses is what is a big part of their work, but he shares a lot on pharmacyinspection.com, and then mypharmacyeducation.com is his new website. Pharmacypodcast.com, of course, Todd Urey, 800 episodes or so, and he is always helping people get their digital careers started. I think of him like the Ravens coach, where like the head, you have this very successful franchise in the Baltimore Ravens, and then their assistant coaches keep going and getting jobs across the country as head coaches, and he's started many podcast careers. There's 3 specific groups of episodes on the Pharmacy Podcast. 5 Roads into Loving Your Retail Pharmacist Career. I know that the title of the unicorn book is Beyond the Pharmacy Counter, but many people just are struggling to enjoy their careers, as maybe the night pharmacist is gone and now they have to figure out what to do with the reduced hours, or they've got metrics that they're not meeting, or they don't feel that they can meet. And she does a great job of talking to some people that really do enjoy their retail or community career. Then there's 5 Roads Out of Retail, which is how do you get out if you no longer are interested in that community role. And then I always struggle to pronounce this, how I #RXOLL. I think it's like RXOL or RX Roll. And it's a series, I think it was 7 different interviews, and it starts with Ashley Cleveland Hayes of RX Ashley, and talks about non-traditional careers. The Phi Delta Chi interview series includes, we've got 5 of them, hopefully, total. The first was community pharmacy interviewing. Kirk asked a question like, Kirk Hebner from Tennessee, like, how many applications do you get for a spot? And I think it was something like 80 that were qualified. And I heard about a hospital position just this weekend that went up for last weekend that went up for a day. It was up Friday. They said it would be open until Monday. They closed it on Saturday. They just had too many applications too quickly. Pharmacy residency interviewing, Devlin Smith and Joe Swanson. Devlin Smith, I did an episode as well with, and she's at Kentucky, and Joe Swanson, I think, is in Tennessee, and they both have unique residencies and kind of fellowships and those types of things, but that's a great interview as well. And then hospital pharmacy interviewing was very popular. Jessica Sum with Mike Mahundro, talking about what does it take now, and obviously just with that story about the one-day pharmacy opening, things are pretty tight there. PLE.org, Lead Grow Shape. PLE is the Pharmacy Leaders in Education Institute, and for the most talented people that I know are Gary Kyle II, Mike Negretti, John Grabenstein, and Nancy Alvarez, and they put their heads together on how to become a leader. And it's not just becoming a leader as, okay, I lead these people. It's becoming a leader that you're noticed and get the job. And I did a couple interviews with Nancy Alvarez that I linked to as well. Hillary Blackburn, again, one of those people that made their own job that didn't exist before she got there. She did do PGY1. I think she did some shift work or floating. She worked in community and independent, but then eventually she had to get a bunch of licenses. She had 11 licenses actually, and she got this very specific skill set, and then with that specific skill set created her own position, or worked as now works as the Director of Pharmaceutical Services as Dispensary of Hope. She interviews a number of people on her podcast. It's at pharmacyadvisory.com. But she had someone who opened up their own CV, resume business. The Metapreneur, Sue Paul. Lazy Millennial, and then talking about pharmacogenomics. So those were 4 that I really kind of resonated with, that I thought were especially helpful when it comes to what you're going to do with your career. RX Ashley is one of those coaches who really helps people one-on-one, though she also helps Southern Cal graduates. As I'm not sure exactly what her position is there, but I know that she helps them decide what careers they're looking for and helps them to get to them. She's a USC grad as well. She talks in her blog about how finding, what you do once traditional pharmacy isn't for you. Time management, kind of explaining how to find the time to work towards a new career. And then she does have an interview prep course, and I think she does one-on-one as well. RX Radio is one of the most popular podcasts out there, as if you look at SoundCloud numbers. And I use Libsyn, so it's a little bit hidden what my numbers are. But he wrote First Time Pharmacist, which is a book that kind of says, hey, you just graduated, here's what you do while you're working. But I thought that there was a space for, hey, here's what you do to get that job in the first place. But he has a lot of great episodes that focus on very specific jobs. So one of the most recent was Health Informatics Pharmacist, and I think that was a Southern Cal grad, Tony Dow. Pediatric Pharmacist with Novella Buyen, I don't know if I got that name right. And then a veterinary pharmacy, Aaron Stutzman, who works in veterinary supply, was also kind of one of those unique jobs. The one that I really kind of, I don't know what the word is, I was very inspired by Dominic Curry, who talked about his residency and how by kind of keeping track of the numbers and outcomes and what he had done, he was able to combine an open position with what he also wanted, which was in burn care, and which is what his training is for. And he didn't stick with, okay, well, I could have gotten a job here, there were some openings. He really wanted to stay where he was. And one of the tenets of being a unicorn pharmacist is that you plant your flag and say, this is where I'm going to live, and then you make the opportunity there. Adam Martin is the Fit Pharmacist up in Pennsylvania, and talk a little bit about his 2 books, Survival Guide for Managing Stress and Fitting in Fitness, and then How to Jumpstart Your Career and Guarantee Your Success. So he's had a good episode with Nicole Zimmerman, talks about changing careers and kind of how to grow in job uncertainty. And I think that's the word we have right now. Non-Traditional Pharmacist. So I think I get this right. Nick Kirkpatrick, Matt Paterini, and Lynn Switag. There's a J on the end of her name, so I know that you don't pronounce it the way that you would think. But he and that group at the Non-Traditional Pharmacist have started interviewing students and kind of like, hey, you guys know what's going on with the job market. What are you guys doing? And Kaylin Davis from Sanford University, Brian Herrera from UCSF, Christy Chung from, I think I pronounced that right, it's spelled a little differently, from University of British Columbia up in Canada, Emily Henners from University of Illinois, Chicago. Those are some good stories on their blog. And then I had an interview with Matt Paterini on the Pharmacy Podcast Network, kind of talking about how he integrated business into his life. Brian Fung on YouTube, if you want hospital, especially informatics information, that's really the place to go to kind of get an idea of how to get into that. But he also does a lot of different kind of very, I guess, smart videos, like studying only 24 hours for the BCPS. When I mean 24 hours, I mean not like I will take it 2 days from now, 24 hours away, but 24 hours of study time focusing on those things that maybe weren't as focused on in residency. Kelsey Douglas is also on YouTube. I don't really know her, but she had 4 great videos. My advice to future pharmacy students, how I chose my career in pharmacy, how I got my pharmacist job, a new pharmacist manager position, and then Paul Tran, who he's been a little MIA with the pharmacy stuff. I know he's doing DIY, where he does some really great stuff in home improvement, and it just kind of shows that you don't have to stick with being in a pharmacy to be successful, and nobody says that you have to do that. But he talks about being a hospital night pharmacist, Amazon pharmacist, and he wasn't one, but just kind of a speculation on that, how he paid off his student loans, and then of course he's got a bunch of videos that are really popular with the students. Kevin Yee is probably one of the most balanced YouTubers on, in that he talks about why pharmacy is not a good career, but then he also talks about with someone who quit dental hygiene to do pharmacy, why pharmacy school over med school, and talks about both sides of that coin. Financial, so we covered kind of the clinical and the business and career, but there's a few in the financial space. So realestaterph.com, he has really great strategies for buying a house and kind of how to live free during residency. So I thought those were two of my favorites. And then 6 Steps to Home Buying with the Your Financial Pharmacist group. Student Loan Planner, he does a great job of helping those, especially with really, really high debts. That's kind of his niche, is what do you do when you have $500,000 worth of debt or something like that. And then Your Financial Pharmacist, I give a little bit of a shout out to each of them. So Tim Ulbrich, he did a really great job with knowing your financial why. So why are you trying to make all this money? Tim Church, talked to him about that book, 7-Figure Pharmacist, a while back. Tim Baker, who is one of the certified financial planners, and then Christina Sylvanik, who's the newest one, and I got to meet her at APHA. It's really nice. So they've got 2 certified financial planners on board, at least, I believe, with the Your Financial Pharmacist team. And then came the stories. So the unicorn job stories. I figured that you'd first want to kind of figure out, well, how do I get my own unicorn job, figure out what I want to do. Then who are the people that can help me. But then also hear that this unicorn exists, and it exists at a very high level with many people. And I'll just go over a few people that I talked to. Anna Shields, one of my favorites, was here at Drake University and worked for me for 3 years at DMAC. And it all started, our meeting started with J-term, and she's now an ambulatory care pharmacist, so that's one in their early career. And there's ambulatory care pharmacists in their late career, and what I mean by late career is that they earn their MBA at 45 and their Pharm.D at 50 years old. So I'm 47 now, so 3 more years, and that would have been me getting my Pharm.D for the first time, even though I've held mine now for 22 years. So just 2 contrasting stories that are really cool. We have an assistant professor from Colorado, has a great story about how they got their biology bachelor's and kind of took their Pharm.D training and really had a passion for a specific population group. And that's how a lot of people are picking where they want to work, is they are determined to help a certain group who may be underserved, and to make that the focus of their careers. Association CEO, so Kate Gaynor here at the Iowa Pharmacy Association, we include technicians and pharmacists. I didn't know how challenging her job interview was and what position she was in. She says she was 8.5 pregnant with her first son when she interviewed for her CEO position. So it's a really great story. And then Nancy Alvarez, who of course was a past president of APHA, recent past president of APHA, and gives quite a bit of advice and things on how she's navigated her career and how she's dealt with uncertainty. Diana Isaacs is a diabetes clinical pharmacist, and that's, I think, one of the biggest opportunities that you have is in that ambulatory care space. And really understanding how that works. Peter Krekel, who is a little bit older than me, and he's been practicing for 37 years. And he also teaches at a PA program, just like Corvino. And he has a great story about how he kind of combines his clinical practice with community. Ken Sternfeld from RxVIP, who is a great champion of getting students in physicians' offices, understanding pharmacogenomic testing, and I interviewed him in episode 207, Remote Pharmacy APPEs, and talking about residency. Mike Kasab here in Iowa, we had a two-part series, episodes 92 and 94, about can pharmacists work from home, and he's hired over 300 pharmacists around the U.S., and he is going through a name change. It's going to be chchealth.com soon, but also kind of a great story of retail to company CEO, consulting company CEO. And then I asked Mike Corvino to tell his story, and he goes into detail about how he went from pharmacy school, where he tried to balance a career in MMA and pharmacy school, and that didn't work the way that he wanted. And eventually he took that kind of competitive spirit into the pharmacy space to create a career that is absolutely what he wants. An emergency preparedness pharmacist, Tracy Dabbs, who works in Georgia, who loves her state, and as someone from Gainesville who went to the University of Florida and who would meet Georgia every year on the gridiron in Jacksonville, Florida, I know how important it is to Georgians to be a Georgian, but she has a great story about how she transitioned. Paul Flagg is from Farmington, Maine, and he talks about how he now works, and I think he's 70, and doing his clinical pharmacy work as well. I talk a little bit about how to become an author, if that's something that you're interested in, give you some links and some people to listen to. But really, the big thing is understanding what you're really trying to do, which is trying to help someone solve a problem. And it can be autobiographical as examples, but what you don't want to do is write an autobiography and then hope people want to hear about you. And then I talk about the creative pen and Josh Kaufman, who I've both talked to, who are both extremely, I mean, they make so much money from their books, they don't need to work. Oncology pharmacist Brandon Dyson, I asked him to tell his story because he, like many of you, especially the PGY1s who are finishing up, he got his job after residency about the last week of residency. So I just thought that was kind of inspiring, that he was really down to the wire. And a number of these people are down to the wire, and they just were persistent and succeeded. A math equivalency I probably shouldn't have done, but basically this book, and it would cost about 8 minutes of pharmacy teaching, and I'll give you 3.5 or 4 hours worth of content. So it was it's just crazy to me what pharmacy school costs, and they doubled our tuition from $2,000 to $4,000 as soon as the Pharm.D came, and that's a year in tuition. And then it seemed like a lot of money because my undergrad tuition was $900 a year at Florida, and then I think it was like $1,000 at Maryland or something like that. Population health management, kind of talking about how you maintain the health of a company, was really kind of a cool one. And then Brandon Gerleman from NonTraditional Pharmacist. It was really neat to hear a little bit more about what he's doing. I interviewed him he was one of my first interviews on the Pharmacy Leaders podcast. That was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And now he like a number of others, just went right from pharmacy school to becoming a clinical pharmacist. So this idea that you have to do residency is kind of a myth, and it does make things easier in many regards, but it's not a must. But he's doing some really great stuff at Montrose Pharmacy in Winterset County, which is Bridges and Madison County fame. So then I talk about the transitions, and I won't bore you with that in this video because we're right about 30 minutes. But I go through, how did I do it when we had the crash? How did I do it when I moved from Arizona back to Maryland? How did I do it when my wife needed to take a position in Iowa? And what did I do? And gave up my real estate practice. And I think there's a lot of fear right now, and I think there's an expectation that things are going to happen quickly. And I think Kate Gaynor said it best, who is the IPA president. She's definitely an idea person. She is a fantastic leader of our organization. And she said it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I mean, I ran a half marathon yesterday, but I think that that's the mindset you want to take. Not in, okay, well, I just wait a long time until these applications come. But no, it's I continue to invest in what you want to do. And after the 30,000 words in this book, or 35,000 words in this book, I kind of came to the conclusion that if you're going to get a job that you want, if you're going to get a job that people envy or that people look up to you for, it's probably going to come by referral. And what I mean by that is you're going to need to either know someone, because if you've invested in them, or you've invested in, whether it's through Appies or internship or just relationships. And that referral way is very different than, hey, there's going to be a bunch of people coming in to a job fair. We're going to kind of pick the job that we want off a menu, which is simply not the way it is now. And I think that's really hard. I don't know how I would have, again, it's so different now than it was before, because before I had so little debt relative to my income that I wasn't limited by that debt. And so it's a little bit different, but I think it would be very difficult without some advice from other people, which is why I made that the center of the book, is there are other people that can help you. So the very last part of the book, I kind of added at the end, because it's like, well, would students be interested in hearing from other students? And that was kind of a BFO, a blinding flash of the obvious. Of course they would. So I highlighted a number of students, and because I'm not tied to students as much as I am to the pharmacists in the digital space, I may have missed some. But what I did was I started a list of student websites. So Fast Forward Pharm, which is Chloe Anastasia Givens. She kind of talks about the opportunities in pharmacy school, and I think she's at South Tennessee. Healthcare Scholar, so James Kong, who is from Texas but worked with a physician starting in P1 year. So it's very different than where you come to physicians like, oh, well, I've been working physicians since all my life in pharmacy life at least. Ahmed, so Pursuit of Purpose podcast, Year Pop. He's a really great guy as well. But I broke it down into residency, leadership, service, and pharmacy school. And because we're already at 33 minutes, I won't go over everything. But just how to stand out in a residency, application process, what do you do after residency, how do you get a job? Then with leadership, what kind of mentorship are you looking for? Who are the pathfinders and trailblazers, starting new opportunities for other people? Overcoming obstacles, what are the things that get in the way? Leadership training, so how do you get that leadership training? There's like the Walker Scholars with like Hannah Murray, Chuck Hennis, and Meg Freitag, who are at South Carolina, and they're really outstanding. And they have the Walker's Pharmacy Leaders, where they literally pick two every year. So there's only 8 of them at a time for the P1 through 4. And then the epilogue was really just kind of a paragraph that I came to that you really want to focus on the activities and not the results, because it's just like weight loss, where if you keep looking at the scale, nothing's going to happen. But if you keep figuring out, how can I get myself running? How can I get myself to the gym? How can I improve my nutrition a little bit? That's the thing that you want to focus on. So have a very happy Easter. I hope this helped you guys out. The ebook is available, but I've certainly given you a number of links in this podcast episode to get you started. And I think that the reason there's so much fear around the job market is because the expectation is that there's going to be a job, even if it's one that you don't like, available right away. And I think it's going to take a bit more work to get the work that you want. But hopefully this book is kind of a roadmap to get you there. Happy Easter.